Is working to counter the CCP on rare earths. Joining us to discuss is David Blackman, energy policy analyst and advisor. He's also a senior contributor for Forbes. Good afternoon to you, David. Can you talk to us about how significant was China's move to restrict the flow of rare earths?
It was very extreme, really, trying to, control the export of these minerals and the products made from them, not only from the Chinese mainland, but also from third-party countries that use the minerals that have been imported from China is a pretty extraordinary move to try to clamp down on the entire global market for these things. So it's something that not just the United States, but Europe and much of the rest of the world is going to have to try to respond to and find a way, I think, at least in the United States case, to de-link ourselves from these Chinese controlled supply chains.
So why is China doing something so extreme? Why is it clamping down?
Well, China controls the vast majority of the market. They control 2/3 of all the production of rare earth minerals across the world. They control 90% of the refining capacity, 90% of the magnet manufacturing capacity of these high grade magnets that are so critical for use in electric vehicles, wind turbines, and nuclear power stations and new generation nuclear kinds of processors. And also for the U.S. military, and most of our modern weapon systems use these high grade magnets as part of their infrastructure. So it's a very important trade internationally, not just for China and America and Europe, but really for every country that wants to have a modern technology and a military infrastructure as well.
So, what I'm trying to get to here is what I'm trying to get at. What is China after by doing this?
Oh, well, they're trying to protect their market, their hegemony in the market. They don't want other countries necessarily to be able to independently produce and refine and process. Let's say the United States, which has massive reserves of rare earth minerals known to exist in our country. Let's say we're able to jumpstart our mining industry and build, a number of large processing and refining facilities and battery making plants and chip making plants to make the chips that are also made from these rare earth minerals. That cuts into China's control of the market and their share of the market, and potentially even harms the Chinese economy because of that. It's a big business in China. And so they're just trying, China is a rational actor. People need to remember, we spend too much time trying to vilify other countries. China is just a rational actor in a global market, and they have a market share that they're trying to protect. And this is how they do it. Now, trying to clamp down on the actions of third party countries is a pretty extraordinary step to take. And that's really what the Trump administration has been responding to for the last 2 weeks. But, they're a rational actor trying to protect market share. And that's really what this boils down to.
Okay, I would argue that China's a rational actor in some aspects, but it's not in other aspects. I wouldn't say across the board. And of course, we can't ignore China's human rights record as well, right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
So earlier you mentioned the importance of these rare earth minerals. So if they're so important, how did Western nations allow China to gain such dominance in these critical minerals in the first place?
Yeah, it all goes to the tension between mining activity, fossil fuel use in the United States and the rest of the world, and environmental protection. We have this radical environmental movement currently in the United States. It goes all the way back to the 1960s. And that environmental movement became very powerful in the US and Europe throughout the 1970s. And as we had this opening to China at the same time, thanks to Henry Kissinger and Richard Nixon, and how all that began, it became pretty apparent very quickly that China was home to massive reserves of these kinds of minerals. And the Western world made a decision in the late 70s, early 80s to actually get out of the mining business and basically export the pollution, the environmental impacts, the emissions from that activity to other parts of the world. So they're out of sight, out of mind to voters back here in America. And so it was a convenient way for politicians to show themselves as favoring policies to clean up the environment, when really all they were really doing was transferring the industrial activity and the pollution and emissions that occur from that activity to another part of the world where we didn't see on the evening news every day. And that's really when this all germinated, and we become progressively more dependent on the supply chains controlled by China ever since, to the point where we have to import 80% of our needs here in the United States.
So, David, in your view, how seriously do you think the Trump administration is treating this situation right now, the latest move by China?
Well, I think they're treating it as an emergency situation, as we saw Monday with this new agreement with Australia and Prime Minister Albanese. But with President Trump, with this $8.5 billion plan to boost production and refining of these minerals in Australia, to much of it to be exported to the United States for our use here in this country. At the same time, the administration is trying to streamline the permitting processes for new mining operations here in the United States, and looking for ways to boost investments to create new refining and processing capacity here in the U.S. as well. Because today, so much we're the second largest producer of rare earth minerals in the world, but it's just about 1/7 of what China produces. And most of what we produce in the United States is actually exported to China to be refined and processed. And the magnets are built in China and then re-exported back here to the United States. And so this is not a sustainable situation, especially because of the military needs for these kinds of minerals and those magnets and chips.
So, David, this collaboration between the United States and Australia on critical minerals, theoretically speaking, these two countries combined, do they have enough rare earths to completely eliminate dependence on China?
Yes, absolutely. Sure we do. We have enough in the United States to supply our own needs. But the problem we have here is that, at least over the past several decades, it's taken 15 to 20 years from the time a new mine is proposed until you get first production out of it. Obviously, we don't have 15 to 20 years to resolve this situation with China. And that's why you see the administration making the move with Australia on Monday. In July, they made a significant deal with a company called MP Materials in California, which is the nation's most sizable refiner of these materials, and which manufactures these batteries there in California. And they're going to be making other deals that right now they're looking for ways to, gain an equity interest in an enormous rare earth minerals mine in the southwestern coast of Greenland, which is, just not far from the United States and a friendly country. And so the administration's moving very aggressively on this. I believe we're probably going to have a situation here in the coming months when the president declares a national emergency related to this situation, which would give him some more extraordinary powers to enter into these kinds of agreements and move very quickly to open new mines and reopen mothballed mines and factories. So this is a big deal. It's a real national, it's a national security crisis for the United States. I truly believe that.
Wow, it sounds like a very serious situation. I mean, what do you think about Trump slapping tariffs on China, 100% additional tariffs? Do you think that's going to help with the situation? Do you think it could be effective in motivating China to pull back or walk back their latest move?
Well, I think it's an effective tactic in a negotiation. The United States market is so enormous. The Chinese economy is greatly harmed by tariffs that we, apply to imports from their country. There's no question about that. And so, and it's just one of many tools the president has, in these negotiations to try to get China to ease the pressure off on the rare earth sector. And so this is going to be a very complex negotiation involving a lot of different things. I know the president is meeting with President Xi at the end of this month. Hopefully that'll be a productive meeting, but I just think China has such a self-interest in controlling this market because it gives them influence, not just economically, but militarily and from a national security perspective over not just the United States, but a lot of other countries around the world, that it is going to be very aggressive in protecting this market position that it now dominates.
Okay, David, I just want to get one more comment from you. Overall, who has more cards to play here? Who has more leverage in this situation?
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. Because our market is so big in the United States, President Trump holds almost all the cards in negotiations with most every other country on earth except for China. China is a very powerful country with a very powerful economy and a growing military establishment that is not the equal of the United States, but certainly, is capable. And so this is a real negotiation in which I think both sides are going to have to make concessions in order to get to a solution that works for both sides. And that's going to be hard to do, but we've seen President Trump make a lot of deals in his time, and hopefully he'll be able to reach an agreement with President Xi that satisfies everyone.
All right, well, we'll keep a close eye on this. Always a pleasure to speak with you, David. Thank you.
Thank you.
The head of a large Chinese transnational crime syndicate is on the run from global authorities. That's after the U.S. busted his operation.